We have breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Kansas has received its notice of allegations from the NCAA, which include 3 potential major violations for the men's basketball program. This according to Yahoo Sports. The Jayhawks have been charged with lack of institutional control, and Coach Bill Self is facing a charge as well. The Level 1 violations are tied in part to the recruitments of Billy Preston and Silvio De Souza. The football program is also facing a Level 2 violation. So what does this all mean? We're going to get one of our insiders in here who's been covering this from the get-go. His name, Dennis Dodd. Dennis joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Okay, layman's terms here, Dennis. What is going on? How important is this?
Well, it's big, first of all. The NCAA is basically nailing Kansas for payments made to Billy Preston of $90,000 by a third party and Silvio De Souza of $20,000. They are tying that to Kansas, and the way they're getting in, I don't know, through the back door, maybe through the front door, saying this is an issue of institutional control. They are citing Bill Self under the coach responsibility bylaw. How that affects him in the moment, we're not quite sure, but it's not a very good thing for Kansas. These are Level 1 violations, which you have to assume, given the gravity of this whole investigation, starting with the FBI, is going to lead to severe sanctions. I'm thinking postseason, maybe multiple years, and definitely scholarships. And it's only the first, or should be the second, of a long line of schools that are going to get nailed like this, Chris. As you remember, I talked to Stan Wilcox, the NCAA number 2 in late June, who told me they were going to start rolling out notices of allegations like this in early July. The only thing that's changed is the timing. They've got NC State now on the books. Now Kansas, we can expect about 4 more of these before the end of the year. He said a total of 6 by the end of September. I don't think we're going to get there by the end of September, but we're going to get there, and it's going to be ugly.
So you say potentially a postseason ban and potentially terrible news for Bill Self as well. You say that this is probably going to affect him mightily. How could it affect Self and this basketball program, and could it happen as early as this season?
Well, the new coach responsibility bylaws says there can be not a dissociation from the program, but a suspension from the program for up to 5 years. I don't think that's going to happen in this case. And let's not forget, Bill Self, I think, has a heck of a parachute waiting for him if it's that bad. Greg Popovich is nearing the end at the San Antonio Spurs. They are very close friends. I think we could see Bill Self with the Spurs. Now, is it going to happen this season? If indeed Kansas is getting its notice of allegation today, the average case takes 9 months to process. I don't know how the NCAA is figuring where the 9-month clock started. Is it today? Is it from the time they started investigating? I don't think Kansas will be impacted this season. Matt, you can probably give us more on that, Matt Norlander, but I would say maybe the season after that, if I had to guess, and that's all it is right now.
Matt Norlander is going to be joining us in just a little bit here on CBS Sports HQ as we continue to break down the breaking news that Kansas has received its notice of allegations, and they've been charged with lack of institutional control, Level 1 violations for the college basketball program. How does this compare to some of the other things that have come out in college basketball the last few years? Because, you know, just sitting from the outside as an average fan, you hear the stuff that may or may not have happened at Arizona and to Sean Miller, and then nothing really becomes of it. How does this compare to that, and maybe like a North Carolina as well?
Yeah, I wouldn't say nothing's going to come of it at Arizona or Louisville or some of these other cases. I think they're next. Yeah, just not yet, just not on the docket just yet. I kind of compare it to, and I hate to say this, Penn State in football. And I'm not going to say there's going to be a 4-year postseason ban, but that's kind of how they got Penn State. That's how they got them in the Jerry Sandusky case. More to the point, USC football in 2010, they alleged institutional control without naming Pete Carroll and any of the allegations. It looks like it names Bill Self in the allegations. And USC got 2 years of a bowl ban. Now, look, the NCAA will tell you, do not compare cases. The enforcement panels are different on each one. The infractions committees are different on each one. And I think that's something to consider here. They've got a rotating group of 24 infractions panels, any 6 of which can be applied to this case. So, but it is serious. Judging from the allegations, I would have to think that a postseason ban, at least for 1 year, has to be on the table.
Okay, interesting stuff from Dennis Dodd. Hang tight. We also have Matt Norlander joining us now. Matt, you heard what Dennis had to say. You've been able to go through this report yourself, and you as well have been all over this and other happenings around the college basketball world off of the court. What's your reaction, and tell us what this means?
Reaction is it's about time. I was told in August that Kansas would be getting hit in September by one person, was waiting for a second. That didn't come through. But a lot of coaches have been reaching out and asking specifically about Kansas behind the scenes, inquiring when is this going to happen. Now it officially has. There was a report on Friday locally that this was pending, and indeed we see this here. There's a lot of stuff to touch on here, Chris. Most notably, not just Bill Self, but his assistant Curtis Townsend. Now what we have here are multiple different aspects and facets of this. What is not mentioned in the Yahoo report, and we don't know if this will come to be, was, do you remember when we were covering the trial for .com and HQ, Curtis Townsend was alleged to have discussed the potential recruitment of Zion Williamson and a willingness to pay Zion Williamson and his family. That's not specifically mentioned here, but I'll remind viewers that the NCAA had outside counsel at every single day of the trial. So while Mark Emmert was not there and big people within the NCAA, they know everything that happened, all the tapes that were played, and there was a lot of stuff at those trials that did not make Curtis Townsend look good. So as we move forward here, keep an eye on not just whether Bill Self gets suspended and for how long. Will Kansas continue to retain longtime assistant Curtis Townsend? Yes or no? As for a timeline, Dennis Dodd is completely right with that 9-month timeline. If you're looking for something to happen to Kansas and to Bill Self in the immediate future, I don't see how that happens. There is a protocol in place, and Kansas will have the right to respond and fight the allegations, and then from there we'll find out more. But I do think that Kansas, which projects as a top 5 team in college basketball this season, will play out this season without any direct punishments. One more note, the 2018 Final Four for Kansas is very much subject to vacation because Silvio De Sousa, who sat out last season, did play in that Final Four loss against Villanova. And so if the NCAA deems that enough went wrong there, yes, Kansas could officially have that 2018 Final Four wiped off of the books.
Would that also wipe off the 2018 Big 12 title, Matt, if that is the case?
It absolutely would. In any game that Silvio De Sousa played in, it's wiped out. It's basically, it's not a win. It's vacant. The wins are vacated, essentially. Syracuse went through this with a number of years off of Jim Boeheim's record. So, yeah, the Big 12 title would also be taken off the books there. Dennis touched on the bylaw 11.1.1.1. That is head coach responsibility. This is going to be not even a trial balloon necessarily, but an interesting case to see how Self is hit, because Self gets plenty of talk, but I assure you, from coaches to ADs to agents in college basketball, they're waiting on Arizona and Sean Miller and what happens there. I was told that Arizona is not coming in the immediate future. They're more intermediary, maybe early 2020. But for what Self and that Kansas program have had attached to them, I saw TJ Gassnola, Chris and Dennis. I saw TJ Gassnola speak from the stand, laying out how he went to the guardians of Billy Preston in a hotel room at a Kansas Midnight Madness and said, your recruitment with that party, it's over. I'm the one that's going to funnel this, and talking about paying tens of thousands of dollars there. This is how Kansas is going to get hit. It's just a matter of how much of the punishment is going to be retroactive. Will the NCAA decide to be as harsh as what Dennis alluded to and hit Kansas with a postseason ban? Not for this season. I just don't see how that's going to be possible. But the season after that, we'll wait and see. I do think a suspension for Bill Self is also inevitable. But again, I don't see how that happens before the end of the season. So if we're talking Bill Self getting punished and getting suspended, I think it's November 2020 at the earliest.
Okay, so it's a long process here, but there's plenty on the table. And Dennis Dodd, along with our Matt Norlander, reporting on this from the get-go, that Kansas is in some big trouble here, and it might be a suspension for the head coach, it might be a postseason ban, it might be all of the above, but it might not happen this season. And Dennis, you compared this to a couple of things that happened in college football. Penn State, USC. This is major stuff here. If I'm a Kansas fan, and you know plenty of them being from that part of the country, what am I thinking right now? How am I feeling?
If I'm a Kansas fan, I go to the one thing that protects the program, and that's recruiting. This is going to absolutely destroy recruiting. And as Matt said, and we talked about already, if this is lingering over the Kansas program, for a year or more before the NCAA penalizes it, this is going to just absolutely destroy recruiting. It's going to be hard for them to get players having an uncertain, not only not knowing the future, but absolutely uncertain as to how it's going to affect the program after they get the penalties. But I think we all agree here there's going to be some kind of penalties handed down. This is almost a gift that keeps on giving for the NCAA.